The PRovoke podcast, brought to you by PRovoke Media and produced by the international broadcast specialist Marketeers.
Welcome to the PRovoke Media podcast. I'm Aarti Shah, executive editor and host for today's episode. So today we're going to do a pulse check on the state of influencer marketing, especially when it comes to beauty, fashion, and retail, and then also travel and hospitality. There was a moment starting somewhere around 2018 where it seemed like the biggest opportunity for the PR industry was in influencer marketing. But of course, the events of 2020 threw a wrench into everything, including influencer marketing programs. So we've brought onto today's show two influencing marketing experts from Zapwater Communications to sort of give us an update on the lay of the land. So we have Jenn, who is SVP at Zapwater, and Stephanie Poquette, who is VP of Social Media and Influencer Programming at Zapwater. Welcome, Jenn and Stephanie.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah, and so Jenn and Stephanie, so I think both of you spoke at PRovoke North America 2020, which was in February of 2020 in Chicago. And this was before really the pandemic had taken hold in the US anyway. And that world just feels so different than the one we're living in now. And so I'd love for you all to sort of maybe guide us, in terms of where you all were at, a year ago when it came to influencer marketing, and kind of take us through a journey in terms of what changed and how the pandemic really forced a lot of pivots in this area.
Yeah, we had such a wonderful time speaking with you at the conference. It's something we look forward to every single year. And we had a great, healthy round table discussion. And it's amazing to see how much has transformed since then. The pandemic has definitely impacted and changed influencer marketing, as it has for the entire integrated communications category. And as Steph and I look back, Steph and I have worked together for more than a decade. So I feel like we know each other very, very well. And after speaking together, one thing we know for sure is that the influencer marketing industry is not slowing down. It is still going to be on track to be a $15 billion industry in 2022. But what we saw with the pandemic is budget shift. We all know that we saw marketing dollars be slashed, ad dollars slashed, and sadly, obviously, public relations as well. But that said, we saw the buckets of investment shift. And in our experience, we saw a lot of clients spending even more money in influencer marketing. And there were many reasons for that. And first of all, because of convenience, that influencers were able to move to market faster. There was also just the necessity, when advertising budgets were slashed, it's because they weren't able to get together in photo studios and multi-day shoots, and having 50 people in a room to be able to create these advertisements, whereas influencers, again, were able to generate awareness and conversion in a quick and efficient manner. So we definitely saw brands, again, really taking influencer marketing way more seriously and shifting their marketing spend towards it.
Yeah, that's a great point, Jenn. And I think one of the other things that happened is, obviously, we went into this year, early 2020, knowing what some of the trends and anticipated ways that brands were going to be working with influencers was anticipated to be, as well as the social media channels that we thought we were going to see, the most growth on, or the most engagement, the most opportunity. Obviously, that all went out the door, right? We had to kind of evaluate where things were shifting pretty quickly from a brand side, but also influencers had to adapt pretty quickly to make sure that they were meeting the demands of brands, but also shifting their content focus, shifting how they're working with brands in order to be a great partner too. So I think one of the things that our team saw throughout the year is we had conducted a social media and influencer survey in the summer to just kind of gauge where influencers are at, see how they're adapting, seeing how they're kind of pulsing out new information. One of the biggest trends that we saw was expansion of categories, which was a natural. So those who were within the travel space, those who maybe had only been focused on one specific lifestyle sector, were starting to diversify their content because people were at home, people were locked down, they had more free time, more opportunity. The pandemic was really shifting how people were consuming information from brands, but also the content focus areas that they were seeing more interest in. So we saw kind of a big boom within the fitness industry, health and wellness. We saw a lot of shift towards retail and more direct purchases through social media channels. But we also saw travel, the travel industry being savvy about how they were repurposing and catering to these new content areas as well. So providing fitness classes, providing cooking classes, providing virtual experiences that allowed influencers to also work with them and tap into this area and these new expansion of categories too.
Yeah, I think that's a really excellent point about the expansion of categories. And just as a data point, kind of building on what you all said, and I've said this a few times to various people, influencer marketing has been one of our fastest growing categories in our Innovation Saver Awards. And I was curious if that was still going to be true this year. And sure enough, it was. And the pivots that we saw, and to your point, Stephanie, around brands being really savvy about partnering with folks about bringing their experiences home, we're really creative. And so, yeah, I mean, instead of there being a pause button, at least from the work that I saw, we continue to sort of see this explosion in that category. So let's go a little deeper into this the diversification of content. It would be great if you all could kind of walk us through kind of how the narratives that were resonating with particular, with different audiences, how that shifted throughout the year. And maybe we can focus specifically on kind of the sectors that you all have a lot of expertise on. In travel and hospitality, how did we see the kind of core narratives, the themes and the topics that were resonating? How did that evolve throughout the year? And then let's also look at kind of retail, fashion, and beauty as well.
Yeah, well, we definitely saw a big shift. The way that, content creators in general were central to how we consumed information in 2020, and then how we shopped and how, we didn't travel. We work close in hand with an amazing affiliate monetization platform called Reward Style that works with influencers to track their conversion across multiple categories. And what we found through data research and even among our own clients was that consumers were spending more money with influencers more than ever. In fact, in the first half of the year in 2020, Reward Style had $500 million worth of product sales in the first half of the year alone, which is just crazy. In fact, they saw 150% year over year conversion increase in the categories of home, fitness, and skincare and beauty. And among our clients, we saw that too. So again, this is where we saw a lot of our brands continue to invest and pour, frankly, gasoline on the fire of their influencer marketing strategies because they saw a direct return on investment through those efforts. And Steph can talk a little bit more about the travel sector too.
Yeah, so I think when it comes to the travel space, we teed it up a little bit with the last question, but travel was in a really unique position, I think, for a lot of, our partners within this space, and obviously just monitoring the space. A lot of resorts, a lot of tourism destinations fully had to close, for lack of a better way of positioning that. Some of them had to close for a couple months because it just wasn't feasible, and some of the tourism destinations weren't allowing visitors to visit due to the pandemic. So staying relevant, obviously, for these tourism destinations and these resorts and hotels was especially important during this time. Losing 2 months of content was not an option. So I think one of the things that we're seeing more throughout this time is resorts and hotels and tourism destinations really digging into the focus areas, the content buckets, the different ways that travelers experience that destination, bringing that to the virtual realm. This isn't, anything new that anyone did this year. Definitely there was a lot of virtual experiences. There's still a lot of virtual experiences happening. But what is a little bit different about this, this pandemic than maybe, like the swine flu or things that have happened in the past is really we are a very social media savvy world right now. We get a lot of our news, we get a lot of the daily updates from social. So people were looking to social resorts, tourism destinations, everything to have the latest updates as quickly as possible and to be providing programming that was multifunctional and also engaging at the same time. So useful, influencers really helpful on that front and helping diversify that content. Past partners who had been to the destinations, past partners who had really worked with us well in providing content or unique experiences from a virtual perspective really helped kind of keep those destinations relevant, exciting, and at the forefront of social still. So we weren't losing out on, just having pages or brands being quiet for months at a time.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. In fact, and just to plug some of our entries again for the Innovation Savers, we saw some fantastic work around kind of, Stephanie, the points that you made, kind of, creating these virtual experiences and keeping some destinations top of mind, or even, in some cases, some resorts had put in some safety protocols to make it appealing. And, we just saw some really, really great and interesting work in that regard. I want to go back to, we've talked a lot about return on investment and how lucrative that can be for brands when it comes to influencer marketing. So I'm curious if you all can speak a little bit more to that. I mean, I know, Jen, you had mentioned the affiliate marketing links. Can you talk a little bit more about that and sort of, how that area, what are some key trends that we've seen there and maybe we'll see in 2021? But yeah, I'd love to kind of dig a little deeper into what kind of return on investment looks like with influencer marketing.
Yeah, we are very clear that vanity metrics are out the window, and it can't just be about an influencer's engagement, follower count, reach, or unique visitors per month to a blog. There needs to be quantitative measurement to show how their efforts are actually translating to bottom line results. And to your point, affiliate marketing has just been one avenue that we have found to be extremely powerful in showing those tangible metrics to our clients in real time. So affiliate links are something that influencers are incorporating into their blog content, into their social media content, swipe ups and beyond. And again, that is giving brands insight into revenue performing influencers, those that are actually driving sales. And so we have been working closely with clients to integrate that as a part of their strategies to give them an extra layer of confidence in our results. And I can expect that it'll continue to be a trend far into 2021 and beyond. And some candid conversations that we have with clients, and I realize this is a completely different topic, but it still is relevant. Affiliate marketing is also becoming a very important part of media relations. A lot of media outlets are now incorporating affiliate links into their content as well, because it's an ad revenue channel and resource for them. So it's going to play an even larger role in the future. And with that comes, concerns about transparency and making sure there's disclosures, and brands really need to be savvy about FTC guidelines related to affiliate links and certainly sponsored posts. But we have really found success in affiliate marketing as a part of our strategies.
Can you give us a little bit more? I think that piece that you mentioned just now, Jen, about kind of media relations and affiliate links. Can you give us a little bit more detail around the types of media publications that are more amenable to affiliate links? I mean, obviously, we, things like Wirecutter and reviews. I've seen it pretty widely used there. But what about with sort of feature writing and news writing? Where are you seeing what's the state of affiliate marketing there?
We're seeing it very prevalent in women and men's general consumer outlets. So you'll find it, on websites like Refinery29 and PureWow. Even for holiday gift guides, we would receive, email inquiries from journalists saying, we need your client to be a part of Amazon affiliate program in order for us to include you in the list. So, it is becoming omnipresent. There again has to be disclosure at the top that they're using and incorporating affiliate links, but it is being seen now everywhere, which is pretty incredible.
Wow. No, I mean, that really is. I mean, that journalists are basically saying, hey, look, I need an affiliate marketing link in order to include this in a gift guide or in a roundup. That's a huge change, and one that I think we'll continue to watch. And to your point about transparency, it sounds like right now the bar for that is really just disclosure. Is there anything else, or do you foresee any other complications that might arise that you all are planning for, or does it seem like that sort of disclosure is sufficient at this point?
The disclosure is important, but it's especially essential as agencies and brands are building out their contracts for campaigns. We have disclosure information and FTC guideline rules, regulations included in our agreements, and that is incredibly important. And frankly, it's changing all the time. So you really need to be up to speed on what is expected. So yeah, disclosure will continue to be important, but agencies need to keep a very close eye on the FTC guideline changes to make sure that, again, your contracts are solid and sound. And speaking in terms of the fashion, beauty, home, and CPG space, even if you're sending out mailers to influencers releasing a new product, you should and include even information and verbiage in there to say that it's gifted and to disclose that. So it's not just about affiliate linking, but really disclosing free product and beyond.
I have a question on this and around trust. I think the trust barometer just came out, and I mean, one thing that's been consistent over the last several years has been this erosion of trust that's happening, right? And I wonder how you all navigate that with influencer marketing. I mean, I'm speaking now as a consumer, but when I partake and consume influencer content, I do check to see if the influencer had been gifted when they're talking about a specific product. And I will say personally, as a consumer, I'm less interested sometimes in that content. And I don't think I'm alone in this. As I kind of, in my research, I looked at comments, and it seems like that's fairly common. How do you all navigate that? How do you, both, have the disclosures, which are important, and then also build trust with audiences so that they can, so that they trust what the influencer has to say?
Yeah, so I think part of that, first and foremost, is just knowing your brand well, knowing the values that are important to you, knowing the verticals that speak most to you, knowing the qualities that you want to represent as a brand. So that's an exercise that, as an influencer marketing agency, as a PR agency, that's your service that you need to do to your brand, is really make sure that they're digging deep to figure out what those things are. And then having a strong and sound influencer marketing strategy, not just gifting to everyone for the sake of gifting and getting product out to 300 people, but really making decisions on who you're going to work with based on their values, based on past content, based on where they align, and also having healthy discussions with them and sometimes their management team about if the product is a right fit for them. I think we're starting to see brands be more thoughtful about gifting and sponsored content in general. So who they're working with, not doing mass mailers, which, that kind of is a practice of the past that I think brands are starting to taper away from, because they also want to be smarter about the investments that they're making on the influencer front. And really, do you want to spend X amount of dollars on a mailer, or would you rather have two strategic partners who are really going to be moving the needle for you, really aligned with your brand values, and really helping you build content that is strong for you to be repurposing, but also strong speaking to the experience of your product. And I think we're starting to see more brands shift that way. So I think as we're seeing more brands shift that way, as we're seeing more brands being really thoughtful, strategic, mindful of the influencers that they're working with, that piece that you're talking about, that trust piece, that kind of the consumer piece, when you're looking at it, is going to start to wean off a little bit, because you're going to start seeing the influencers that you love, the influencers that you follow, only making really natural decisions for themselves, really authentic decisions. If they're a fitness influencer and they are fitness through and through, really having partnerships that make sense for them, so that you don't feel like, oh, they're just pushing this because they got it gifted, but they're pushing this, they're talking about this, they're sharing this with me because it's something that they truly value themselves as well.
Yeah, I think we're seeing so much SponCon fatigue among consumers. They're becoming so savvy and really paying attention to those influencers that are consistently promoted gifted items, participating in loop giveaways, constantly posting paid partnership features. Those are things that influencers have to take a very close look at, but even more so, agencies and brands really auditing an influencer's content to make sure that their key messages and their announcements and all the things that they want to come through to actually resonate with consumers. So we really look at an agency at an influencer sponsorship content mix to make sure that they're not going over a certain percentage, so that, again, when we do tap them for even just, product campaigns, that again, we are confident that it's going to resonate.
I learned a new word just now, SpawnCon.
Yes, the worst.
That's great. So, okay, so one last question sort of on related to this, is, in addition to sort of the trust building piece, I mean, what about other sort of risk mitigation efforts, in order to sort of vet an influencer so that, to ensure that you're not going to unearth some information that later proved to be damaging, or even, future behavior, right? I mean, today's, someone who seems like a great influencer partner today may engage in some sort of, behavior a few weeks from now after, everything's signed, that could be damaging to the brand, or even weeks, months, years, who knows. So how do you, what are the strategies for risk mitigation?
Yeah, it requires a deep analysis of, influencers past, reviewing their analytics, their growth, and just their channels. If 2020 taught us anything, it's the fact that, influencers were really taken to task by consumers to speak up and speak out against a lot of the things that we saw, from Black Lives Matter to even the insurrection at the Capitol. It really made influencers have to take a hard look at where they wanted to speak up and speak out about things. And it really created this continuum of influencers that were speaking up, and some that were staying silent. And so I think brands are really going to have to take a look at, how they're going to be casting and analyzing, and what their comfort level is. It is the nature of the state of influencer marketing as it stands. So doing a very deep dive into an influencer's background and seeing what they're speaking up about, and their analytics is key.
Yeah, I mean, some of the events that you mentioned were sort of top of mind when I was asking that question, right? So, and another, it's kind of going in a different direction now. Stephanie, you talked a little bit about sort of travel and hospitality and how they kind of pivoted to virtual experiences and kind of other ways of sort of bringing those experiences home to people. I'm curious to look at retail, fashion, and beauty. And how that storyline changed, given that, one of the big things of 2020 was, everybody's wearing stretch pants now, right? And even in terms of beauty, I mean, I know there were these tips about how to look great on Zoom, but then initially that was sort of met with some backlash around, like, wait a second, why are we expecting people? Why are we holding them to, especially women, to these beauty standards at a time when people are managing a lot? So I'm curious to know kind of what were the stories in beauty, fashion, and retail that really resonated during the pandemic?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, to your point, there was no end to the yoga pants, the athleisure sweatsuit,
Yeah.
everything on that front. We definitely saw that trending and happening. But I think really this year, and I'm happy about it as well, and it's one of the things Jen and I were talking about the other day, is, it's a discussion and topic sometimes that isn't always at the forefront, but health and wellness and mental health and wellness really became a very strong topic this year, a very, trending topic. It's something that we saw not only brands leaning into a little bit more, and especially those brands that you were just talking about, those that are in the retail, health, lifestyle, beauty, kind of fashion space, but also influencers leaning into that messaging a little bit more, being a little more candid, being a little bit more authentic about how the pandemic, about how these social situations were really affecting them, and having honest, vulnerable, open conversations about that. And I think we started to see shopping habits and shopping patterns and things start to mimic that. So within the beauty space, we saw a lot of brands kind of maybe putting their health and wellness products at the forefront. Traditional beauty brands are also creating new products that were catering to this health and wellness lifestyle. So new products that are, everything from face masks to, machines that you can use at home for at-home facials, from sweatsuits and athleisure clothing to wellness journals, and just kind of, water bottles that help you drink a gallon of water a day. We really saw a lot of brands pivoting into this space and making that kind of one of the topics that they were talking about. And we saw influencers being more authentic and kind of true to, I think who they are, and a little less glossy on the forefront. So it was really nice to see brands kind of moving into that space and having some of those honest conversations within kind of the beauty, health, wellness field and retailer, fashion field, and also seeing influencers kind of match that. And then obviously, to Jenn's point before, from the reward style numbers, and obviously just Facebook shops, Instagram shops, Pinterest shops, seeing some of the outstanding numbers last year from how sales performed there. It was an area where there was a lot of interest, and probably something that's not slowing down considering where we're still at in 2021.
Yeah, there was this kind of hashtag no filter trend that we saw, or the no edit. Consumers were expecting influencers to show up and really be real about, I'm wearing a Zoom, pretty top, but on the bottom, I'm definitely wearing, sweatpants, to, less makeup and more focused on skincare. And I think 2020 really was about consumers craving a guide, not an aspirational icon. They wanted influencers to be like a sister or a brother, someone they could go to for advice, and to really show up and not try to, as Steph mentioned, gloss over or, be too done up. And so I think we're going to see that trend continue from a sales perspective and the types of things and products that consumers are investing in. But I do think looking ahead that we're also going to see a slight resurgence of some glamour, if you will, almost kind of like how the 1918 flu pandemic, led into the roaring 20s. I do still think that we're going to see 2021 a resurgence of a little bit more polished and aspirational, just because people have been in this hashtag no filter state for so long.
Right. In fact, I think your point about wellness and in home improvement, I know even in our innovation savers, we saw so many entries that were kind of rooted in either some sort of wellness idea, concept, or home improvement. And I can speak to the fact that I have paint swatches all over my house with the intention to paint, because I'm tired of looking at my walls the color they are. But so yeah, I mean, that we definitely saw that reflected, and even some brands, it was unexpected that they were sort of foraying into that space. Jenn, I wanted to touch on something that you just said about what your forecast for 2021, and how you think there will be a resurgence of glamour and sort of aspirational looks, and it's and this is, again, maybe we can close on this, and I don't know if either of you want, I don't know how bold you want to go, but let's try to be as bold as we can in terms of coming up with a forecast for 2021, and I expect that it's quite difficult to do that, because we know that 2021 won't look exactly like 2020. It will not look like 2019, and then there's also the wild cards. I don't think things like the insurrection, right? I mean, there are things that were, I don't want to say totally unpredictable, because I don't think that's the case, but these things that happen that we don't have a ton of control over. So with that in mind, sort of how are you all thinking about 2021, and what do you have any bold predictions, and what are you counseling brands around for this year?
Yeah, I feel like I think of this in three different ways. We have our brand predictions, influencer predictions, and then just even agency predictions. And I kind of want to start with the agency prediction. And that's because of the nature of influencer marketing and the amount of growth and budget that's being put towards it. I predict that the organizational structure will shift. I think that we will see more and more roles carved out, especially at the senior leadership level, that's focused strictly on influencer marketing and the integrated communications constellation. We've had even conversations about this before about, it's a relatively new medium. The first blog post ever published was 1994, whereas, newspapers have been around for hundreds and hundreds of years. So we're really in the third inning of influencer marketing. And I think that agencies that advance their influencer marketing teams will be well positioned to provide the best strategies and the most efficient tactical approaches moving forward.
Excellent point. Stephanie, do you want to tackle that question?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's bold by any means, and I think we kind of touched on it, but one of the trends that it's refreshing to see, one of the trends that I loved out of last year, and one that I think is actually going to shape the industry, how brands and influencers are working together, is that authenticity piece. I think it is really refreshing for people to start seeing the multiple layers of influencers, not just the pretty pictures, but also kind of the bad days and kind of the brands that are catering to the different facets of life. So it's not always, a great makeup look and an outfit. That definitely is part of it. And to Jenn's point, I think we're going to see that coming back throughout this year, but being honest and being open about the times and the experiences that are happening to all of us, having honest discussions about what's going on in kind of, the countries that they live in, being honest about when maybe they're having a bad day or how they're tackling some of those things. And really on the brand front, making strong and strategic decisions about who you're working with so that the flexibility with your brand, the ups and downs of your brand, or, the new products, the new features of your brand that cater to these different moments in people's lives are also simultaneously working with authentic partners that can help you run that out. I think brands and influencers have always said that they're authentic, and definitely I think they were being their most authentic self at that time, but I think we're seeing an even greater greater look into brands and influencers, and I don't see that slowing down, and it's one of the trends that I love most that's happening right now.
That's one of the things that's so interesting to me is that there is no one size content style for influencers. And in kind of the early days, it was easy to sort of categorize them and all, is all kind of having a specific kind of look and style. But one of the things I've noticed is, some are incredibly polished, and that appeals to maybe sort of an aspirational audience set. And others are much more like, like you said, like their bad days, their blemishes, all of that are much more apparent. And they sort of have a different appeal that's more like a friend, right, or a peer. Mm-hmm. So it's just interesting that, in the beginning, I think people would paint with some broad strokes around like, well, influencers are like this. And the content, but the style of content really seems to vary.
Yeah, and I think we're going to see consumers playing catch up with that too. There's always a bit of this kind of consumer thought about influencers and that they're a certain type of way and that they're a certain type of individual. But I think we're catching up a little bit here on the consumer front too, with people getting a better, bringing themselves back to reality. We're like thinking about celebs and everything the same way. They do go through some of the same social struggles and, the pandemic, obviously we're all handling it and we all have different means of how we can handle it. But being, having those open conversations, creating those kind of dialogues, if you will, having safe spaces to have conversations too with these influencers that you have been following for years, and maybe brands are a part of that discussion. We saw a lot of brands being part of that discussion with some of the social issues that have been happening throughout this year. It's going to be interesting to see how that continues, but it's a really kind of interesting trend and kind of a cool trend that happened this year, bringing more authenticity to the internet and just that ongoing dialogue between influencers, brands, and their consumers too.
Yeah, well, this was such a great conversation, Stephanie and Jenn, and it's amazing how this topic has so many different subsets and subtopics to explore, and this is something that I think we will continue to talk about on this podcast as well. But thank you, Stephanie, and thank you, Jenn, for your time today.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and we will be back soon with another episode of the PRovoke podcast.
You've been listening to the PRovoke podcast, brought to you by PRovoke Media and produced by the international broadcast specialist Marketeers.